Hey folks, one of the things that I packed in my boxes, and by the way, they are gone now and I just paid the bill and it cost me about $9,000 to ship all my stuff, which was, I'd say, 60% instruments. So some people will consider that a good investment, some won't. But anyway, one of the things that I did ship, I thought about it quite a lot and I decided to take it, was a Irish lap harp that I bought from a Canadian company some years ago. And I will put on this, it's escaping my mind right now, but I'll put it on the screen when I edit this video. It's a smallish, I think 24 or 28 string lap harp. Very simple, very ornate in the design. The soundboard is solid spruce. And it is a lap harp. It is a smaller harp. It isn't anything near an orchestral harp size. Otherwise I wouldn't have taken it. And yeah, I did a tiny bit of restoration on that harp, not much. Restrung it. Tried to teach myself to play it, and it's one of the most challenging of my stringed instruments. It's the instrument that I find myself having the least natural bent towards playing. For instance, I can play my lyre, I can play mandolins and banjos and anything that's fretted, anything that's bowed, and I feel a certain affinity for it. But there's something about the action, the mechanical action of playing a harp towards yourself and away from yourself with both hands alternating. You think that would sort of relate to the piano, but in my brain I just can't get it to work. But I decided to keep it and work on it because I really, really do love harp music. Now, there are many different strains of harp music. Of course, there is traditional Celtic music, and I was fortunate enough to see the heralded Irish harp in the Trinity Museum about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I took a picture of it. Not a very good picture because it's in a glass case, but it was a privilege to see that particular harp, one of the great treasures of the Irish people. And of course the Celtic harp tradition is one of the big ones, mostly Irish, but also other Celtic places as well. Remember, Celtic folk comprises parts of Scotland, Wales, and Cornwall, the Cornish corner of England, and also a very little bit of Brittany in France as well. And speaking of which, the Bretons have their own harp traditions, notoriously popularized by the great Alan Stivell in the 1970s, and I happen to have one of Alan Stivell's recordings on vinyl, which I treasure. Started out on traditional instruments, but then became known for playing the French harps made by Camac, with steel strings, and they were electrified as well. So some of the later Stivell recordings will be on Camac harps, and some of the earlier ones will be on nylon or gut traditional lap harps or Celtic harps. But there are also many other great traditions stemming from other parts of the world, particularly Paraguay. In Paraguay you have the double harp tradition, and it is actually a double harp, very, very technical to play, intricately built. I actually got a hold of one and shipped it to my friend in England, who's a harp player, for her to enjoy. And then, of course, there are Spanish harp traditions, various European, as well as Asian. Of course, the harp is the one instrument mentioned and sort of described in the Bible, although we don't know if King David's harp was actually a harp or a lyre, which is a slightly different instrument, similar in principle. So we know that the Mediterranean had its own harp traditions as well. And of course, there are variations of the harp in Asian, Far East Asian countries like Japan, with various stringed instruments that are similar in principle to the harp. And of course, Turkish, Persian, Iranian, the sort of Middle Eastern traditions have their own harp type instruments as well. I'm going to detail on what those are, because that would be a 3 or 4 hour video. When it comes to orchestral harp, there's one player that I gravitated towards that taught me a lot about the harp, and that's a Spanish player called Zabaleta. I think his name is Nicolai Zabaleta. Has lots of recordings and covers the harp repertoire from the early Baroque, late medieval, early Baroque, all the way through, let's say, the Romantic and modern harp pieces, you know, in the French, German, English, Russian traditions. And I have 3 or 4 of his albums, and he's just an absolutely fantastic player. There are many others, many others, if you're interested in the harp. But it's an instrument that has always had my ear. I love to see it on the stage. I love the way that it's been sort of brought back into modern music through a lot of folk rock or dark folk or neo-folk bands. If you watch a lot of those European dark folk bands like Omnia and many others, it's sort of a ethereal / gothic dark wave, dark folk kind of music that taps into sort of the pre-Christian ideals of the land that they're on. Each country sort of sounds a little bit different or differently. And the harp is often used, whether it's a lap harp or a larger orchestral harp, or even sometimes other derivatives of harps as well. But I've noticed it coming back into a lot of music, and people like Bjork have used them. Dead Can Dance, other great bands that have that sort of ethereal, dreamlike sound employ a lot of harp music, or sorry, a lot of harps in their music. And again, you get different textures because you know, you have the traditional nylon, or what would have been gut strung harps, nylon strung harps with a very sort of soft pluck, wooden pluckish sound to them, because you're getting the resonance from the soundboard. Most harps have a soundboard, much like any other stringed instrument. It's smaller, unless it's an electric harp. Sometimes they don't have soundboards. But you get that sort of very thick, luscious, woody sound from some of the traditional harps. And then you get a really wiry, metallic sound from wire-strung harps or metal-strung harps or other types of harps, almost like a zither sound to them. And then you have all manner of electric harps as well. And if you go on YouTube and just type in harp music, there are a number of channels now that just devote themselves purely to harp music, and whether it's traditional, sort of their own pieces, or taking popular pieces and adapting them to harp. This has been a big thing since Two Cellos got big, right? Remember when Two Cellos took Smooth Criminal and they blew up on YouTube? Well, now people are doing it with every instrument. So, for instance, if you go look at hammered dulcimer videos, you'll find, you know, some genius hammered dulcimer players adapting Metallica or something like that to hammered dulcimer. Well, the harp's the same thing. I've seen at least 2 or 3 harp channels where they're doing just that. They're taking popular music and creating transcriptions for harp, whether it's traditional harp or electric harp. And they're all very interesting, and it's nice to see it getting sort of a fresh birth in modern popular music. And people now strap them on like a guitar. You don't have to sit with it particularly. I've seen people playing them standing. But I just thought I'd do a video on it because I find it really, really interesting. And when I thought about selling my harp, you know, I had one or two nightmares and woke up saying, no, I'm not going to sell it. This is a treasure to come across something like this. A really nice handmade, you know, lap harp that sounds absolutely delightful. What a treasure to have something like that. And they're hard to get a hold of because they're very expensive. Like a lot of folk stringed instruments, they cost a pretty penny for the good ones. I mean, you can buy the really cheap ones on eBay that are made in Pakistan. I wouldn't advise it, but the really good ones, either US or Canadian or European made or of a similar ilk from other countries, you know, usually in the thousands rather than the hundreds. So I decided to keep it. I decided to wrap it up and keep it and persevere with it, even though it's the instrument that I perhaps struggle with more than any other stringed instrument. It's something that I'd like to try and have another go at on the other side of the channel and see if I can get somewhere. So this is a video about harps and harp music. Hope it's interesting. Let me know if you have any experience. See you next time.